Cinema Wellman. I am your host, David, and another month is in the books, so that means that it's time for the best and worst of our July screenings here at the cinema. Hard to believe that the summer is half over already. I hope that you're staying safe and enjoying the weather. Some extreme heat out there, so I hope everybody's cooling off somewhere. I never have to worry about the extreme heat because it's always dark and it's always cool here in Cinema Wellman. Let's get going and begin where we usually do with the worst of the month. Since we didn't watch La Ventura this month, we'll begin with The Finks from 1970. If you're old enough to remember the 70s, you remember how strange a time it was. Lots of revolution going on, along with lots of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Apparently, a good portion of those drugs were being used during the production of this absolute mess of a motion picture, if you want to call it that. I sat through 81 minutes of this movie, and I'm still not quite sure what it was that I saw. You know how sometimes famous people show up in movies as themselves? These cameos can be kind of fun, but in small doses, and the famous people have to be, famous. Here is a list, and it's not everybody, believe me. I left out at least 10 to 15 names. Here is a list of cameo appearances in The Finks. Edgar Bergen, Busby Berkeley, Dick Clark, Xavier Cugat, Leo Gorcey, Hunts Hall, Georgie Jessel, Ruby Keeler, Dorothy Lamour, Guy Lombardo, Pat O'Brien, Maureen Sullivan, and Richard Pryor? Find that this movie was made in 1970, not 1950, when many of these people were popular, aside from Richard Pryor, of course. In this movie, they just seemed out of place, and in some cases, highly medicated. Odd Job from the James Bond movies shows up, played by Harold Sakata. He makes an appearance, and he looks as confused as Hunts Hall. IMDb takes a shot at the plot. A rock band becomes embroiled in foreign affairs when they're sent to go on tour in Albania as a cover to find hostages in a remote castle held by communist enemies of the U.S. Now, I hope that the makers of Wag the Dog used Albania in that film based on the Finks. That would maybe, if I found that out, maybe take this off the list, but for now it sticks. So that's about it. It's a lot worse than it sounds, actually. And the Finks is the name of the band. So now you really don't need to see it at all. Next, from 1993, the year of Dakota, Super Mario Brothers. Now, were there no animated movies in 1993? Was it not possible to cartoon in 1993? Now, I know the answers to these questions, but I bring them up only because this movie isn't a cartoon and it clearly should have been. How on earth was a live-action version of this video game green-lit? And how do you choose Benny Blanco and Mr. Smee to play Luigi and Mario? John Leguizamo made this garbage the same year he made Carlito's Way. What a turnaround. Kind of like I made it to the big time and I worked with Pacino, quickly followed by my career is over kind of a thing. The movie's poster boasts this ain't no game. Well, it's no movie either. Let's see if IMDb can make any sense of this. Two Brooklyn plumbers, Mario and Luigi, must travel to another dimension to rescue a princess from the evil dictator King Koopa and stop him from taking over the world. Nope. Still sounds exactly like the game. The game was great. This movie was shite. If you like a Super Mario Brothers fix, play the game. And Koopa's played by Dennis Hopper, and it's terrible. It's not Dennis Hopper's worst movie. All right. So good thing they don't make movies out of video games anymore. So, what? Oh. Well, what could be worse than this? Well, the movie that has been judged to be the very worst movie screened here at Cinema Wellman in July. It's from 1978, and it's Star Crash. Now, I've always been reluctant about those so bad it's good movie lists. The reason being that it's a pretty fine line on which to teeter. With dialogue like, kill, kill, over there, Star Crash will never be confused with, well, anything else really, since it's so oddly bad. Since when is outer space so colorful? I wasn't sure if I was looking at a close up of someone's Christmas tree or space. Was I on acid? There's a cyborg with a Texas accent. Why does that happen? How does that happen? I have questions. David Hasselhoff made a movie with Christopher Plummer, and it's this movie. And Marjoe Gortner, and I'm guessing a lot of cocaine. This is an Italian production that is so poorly dubbed it belongs on Channel 56's Martial Arts Theater on a Saturday afternoon. It is comically awful. The effects are horrendous, and it came out a year after Star Wars. Now, my favorite part of Star Crash, and it almost saved it from this worst status, is that, and try to follow me now, they have missiles. I'm going to use this little prop, this little sriracha bottle. Missiles filled with soldiers. The soldiers are inside the missiles. The missiles are fired from one spaceship, and they go through the hull of another spaceship, and then the missile opens up, and the soldiers come out fighting. Maybe I was on acid. Before shifting gears and talking about good movies, and there were some, I wanted to take a minute to condemn an entire genre because I'm sick of sitting through boring garbage. No, not romantic comedies. I've already gone on record many times with my hatred of that fluffy sewage. Most of these are forced viewing, the romantic comedies, because they were Oscar nominees, many for the dreaded Best Original Song award. God, I hate that award. The new genre in my sights is the period piece. And I realize that's not really a genre per se, but it's a thing. And I hate that thing. Now officially in second place in the red alert, if the only Oscar nomination is in this category, is Best Costume Design. Don't get me wrong. I have great respect for costume designers. I also have great respect for composers. What I hate is when their great talents are wasted in otherwise horseshit movies. I mention this because the worst list for July would have included 6 movies instead of the three that I gave you. If I counted the 3 period pieces of crap that I spent what seemed to be 18 hours watching, I would have mentioned them separately, but to be honest, they all really seem like the same exact movie. It was long, it was boring, the costumes kicked ass. So what was good in July? Well, I'm glad you asked, because there were in fact 6 films worth noting. And we'll go back to 1947 for The Luckiest Guy in the World. This Oscar-nominated short was part of the long and successful Crime Does Not Pay 2-reel series. It was actually the last installment of this long-running series. 2 reels were shorts that you got to see at the movie theater before the feature. I remember my mom telling me about going to the movies and seeing a cartoon, a newsreel, a 2-reeler, sometimes a B movie, and a feature, all for some ungodly sum of $0.25. I may be imagining the part about the popcorn and the soda being included in that total, but that's probably too good to be true. The Crime Does Not Pay series always featured stories about people getting involved with crime and it, not working out in the end. Hence the name of the series. This episode centered on gambling and a degen gambler, we know those people, who is stealing from his company to feed from his habit, all of a sudden goes on a wild winning streak, and it appears that his life is headed in the right direction. You know it doesn't end that way, right? Remember the name of this series, Crime Does Not Pay. I've seen a bunch of episodes in this series, and they're usually really pretty good. Decent stars and good production value. This one reminded me of a Twilight Zone ending, and that's always good. Our next film goes Inside the Mind of a Cat from 2022. I am not a cat owner. I've owned cats in the past, or the people I lived with owned cats, and I like cats, but I am not a cat owner. Even though I don't have a cat of my own, any future cat to be named Chairman Meow, I love to hang out with and play with cats belonging to friends and family. Uh, Axel, little shout out. You know, cat. I say that at my sister's. I know the cat's name, and Allison and Orlando's cat. I've always been fascinated by cats and their personalities. At times, they really don't seem to give a damn if you live or die. I kind of like that in a pet. This Netflix documentary is fantastic, and it explains a ton of cat behavior that I've been misinterpreting all these years. I always thought I was boring my sister's cat to death because he'd get all squinty eyed and slow blinky while I was petting him. Turns out that he likes me. He's not bored, he's a fan. Who knew? I also love how cats can just be sitting around relaxing, and all of a sudden, they must be somewhere else. They never seem to do much of anything, and yet they are urgently needed elsewhere. The documentary explains this and many other curiosities of our fine feline friends. They do recognize their own names, they do love you as much as dogs, and they are loyal to their masters. That means Lisa has three that are loyal to her right now. The cats just have a different way of showing it. If you love cats, you'll love this documentary, and it kind of made me want to get a cat. For about 67 minutes. Next, from 2014 is Banksy Does New York. There are a total of 3 documentaries on the Best of July list this month, but you come to expect that from Cinema Wellman because truth is stranger than fiction, after all. I'm a huge fan of the guerrilla artist Banksy and have followed his career for close to 2 decades. I love how he creates art in the middle of a seemingly busy city that goes unnoticed until the day after. Then suddenly it's, did you see the Banksy? Yeah, on the wall of the deli. Banksy's art is controversial at times since he can be very political, and nobody really knows exactly who he is. There are tons of theories, and I saw an entire documentary about just that. I love the ideas he expresses in simple black and white. He sometimes uses red, but he's mostly black and white when he paints. This is the 3rd documentary I've watched about Banksy, and they're all quite different, and they're also very, very good. This film chronicles a residency that Banksy had in New York City in October of 2013. Every day, for 31 straight days, a Banksy popped up somewhere in the city. They weren't all paintings on walls. Some of these were full-blown multimedia pieces of art. Remember those dioramas you made for your teachers in middle school? Now think of those life-sized and made by Banksy. While I'm at it, do a Google search for Dismal Land. It's a bemusement park built by Banksy, and I'd love to go there someday. What he created there will give you an idea of some of the pieces that he displayed in New York, or you can just watch this movie. The pieces of art are fascinating in and of themselves, but this documentary shines because it features the reaction of the city every day as a new Banksy is revealed. I was horrified to see that quite a few were tagged or painted over by other so-called artists as soon as they were spotted. To me, this is purposeful destruction and vandalism of a piece of art. And this is why we can't have nice things. Well, we do have some nice things, including this and other documentaries about Banksy, and also Banksy themselves, of course. Thank you for your art, whoever you may be. Next, from 1998, is Belly. As you know, we watch anything and everything here in Cinema Wellman. It's part of the fun, actually. Being willing to watch anything means that you're open to all types of films. It means that you're interested in things outside of your little corner of the world. It means that you're willing to watch movies for which you were not the intended demographic. I'm also that way with music. On the Spotifys, I'm in the top 4% of all Tool listeners. Now, that makes total sense. I'm definitely in that demographic. I'm also in the top 13% of all Taylor Swift listeners. And not even close to being in any of those demographics. It works with music and it works with movies. Take chances. Listen, watch outside of your comfort zone, and you'll be happy that you did. If you're not black, watch some black films. You're not a member of the LGBTQ community, watch some films that have that as the theme. And I swear you're going to be happy that you broadened your horizons a little bit. Don't be afraid of movies, or music for that matter. Belly was recommended to me by a work friend who has since moved back to Pittsburgh, and I thank him for the recommendation and wish him well upon his return home. He grew up in the projects in Pittsburgh and made a list of movies for me to see that, in his opinion, capture what it's like to live in an urban and sometimes volatile environment. I was quite impressed with Belly and its director, Hype Williams. The cast is also impressive, even though it doesn't feature too many known actors. Rappers Nas and DMX play the leads, and several other musicians are cast in supporting roles. This certainly adds authenticity to the story. We're not talking Oscar-worthy performances, but everyone was very solid in this, as was the story of two young friends getting involved in organized crime and drug dealing. Director Williams, who usually directs music videos, creates a stylized setting full of glitz, money, cars, and women that's also set against poverty and crime. Belly would not have been on my radar if it wasn't for Mike's recommendation. And I'm already looking forward to the other films that he put on that list for me. Next, from 2002, is Barbershop. I watched this on a total whim and was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed it. I'm a fan of Cedric the Entertainer's CBS sitcom The Neighborhood, and since he's in Barbershop, I decided to sit in the chair. Ice Cube is the lead, and I've gone on record that he can act a bit, so I was curious to see if he could, carry a movie. I understand the cultural significance of the barbershop to the black community. The barbershop is often one of the centers of the neighborhood and is home to a lot of talk on a variety of subjects and a lot of good-natured trash talking and a lot of love. I don't have a need for a barbershop anymore, obviously, but if I did, I'd want to go to the one that Ice Cube runs in Barbershop. I liked this so much I watched the sequel. Notice that didn't make the list, but you can't win them all. And that leaves us with the best movie that we screened here at Cinema Wellman in the month of July. It's recent. It's from 2022. It's our third documentary on the list, and it's titled High Noon on the Waterfront. If you're a regular consumer or even an occasional consumer of things Cinema Wellman, you know that when it comes to movies, we seek originality. We're not interested in sequels. We are not interested in any series or verse. Show us something new. When you've seen close to 8,000 movies, that bar may seem high, too high to pass, but it's not really. The problem is that many studios don't give a shit one about originality. All they care about is money. And I get that. It's their money. I can't speak to that because I don't have any. This film was so unique that I'll let IMDb handle the synopsis before adding my 2 cents. Here it is. An inventive remembrance of the impact of the Hollywood blacklist on two American classics, rendered as a visually mesmerizing dialogue between Carl Foreman and Elia Kazan. Now, we've talked about the House Un-American Activity Committee and the blacklist that followed here before. Some people went before the committee and named names, Elia Kazan, Walt Disney, while others refused to name names, Carl Foreman. I had seen High Noon, and I had seen On the Waterfront. But I had no idea that these films were actually allegories for the writer of High Noon and the director of On the Waterfront about their experiences with HUAC and the fallout and the blacklist. While the visuals consist of clips of both of these films, the audio is 100% the words of Carl Foreman and Elia Kazan. Foreman is voiced by Edward Norton and Kazan by John Turturro. Listening to both of these men explain their side of the story was fascinating. I could see merit in both sides of the argument, but I ended up on the same side of this issue that I've always been. This is very short. It's 14 minutes, this documentary, but it is a must-see for any fan of film history or American history for that matter. So that's it. That's a wrap for Cinema Wellman's Best and Worst of the month of July. Thank you so much for joining us here on YouTube or Spotify, or if you read the blog at cinemawellman.com. We love that you're consuming Cinema Wellman no matter how you're doing it. We hope you're back with us here next week when we'll be doing an episode we're going to call Welcome to Camp Wellman. We hope you'll join us for that. Until then, take care.